The Texas sun burned high that morning, a cruel overseer to the misery below. Dust hung thick in the air, stirred by boots and wagon wheels. In the center of the auction yard stood a woman no older than 25. Her once white dress turned brown from dirt and tears. Her name was Evelyn Carter, though no one cared enough to ask. Her stepbrother, a bitter man named Clyde, barked at the crowd. $5! Strong arms can cook and clean. What more do you need? She stared at the ground, shame and hunger carving hollows into her face. The men laughed, some spitting tobacco, others leering openly. Evelyn's hands trembled behind her back, the rope cutting into her wrists. She remembered her father's ranch before he died. Golden fields, warm bread, the scent of rain. But those memories felt like dreams now. Stolen when her stepfamily sold everything and left her with nothing but bruises. "She ain't worth a dime," one man called out. "Too quiet," another jeered. Clyde smirked, shoving her forward again. $5, he repeated, voice mocking. "That's all it takes to own her." Evelyn closed her eyes, whispering a prayer only the wind could hear. Then came a voice, low, calm, but carrying power like thunder on the horizon. "I'll take her." The crowd fell silent, the laughter dying mid-breath. The speaker stepped from the shadow of the saloon porch, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a long black coat. His hat cast a shadow over his face, but his eyes, steel gray, caught the sunlight. Daniel Grayson. The name alone carried weight across the frontier. Some said he was a widower, others called him cursed. No one truly knew. He handed Clyde a few coins, ignoring the greedy grin that followed. "Untie her." Clyde hesitated, his smirk faltering. "You sure you want this one, mister? She's got a temper, that one. Hardly worth the trouble." Daniel's gaze was steady. "Untie her," he repeated, his tone leaving no room for argument. The rope fell away, leaving red welts on Evelyn's wrists. She looked up, eyes glassy with disbelief. "Why?" she whispered. Daniel adjusted his coat and said simply, "Because no one should be owned." He turned to leave, and she followed as if drawn by invisible threads, her bare feet dragging through the dust toward the man who had just changed her fate. They rode in silence across the open plains. Daniel's black stallion trotted steady, and Evelyn sat behind him on the saddle, holding tight, unsure if she was allowed to breathe freely yet. The land stretched endlessly, gold and crimson beneath the dying sun. "You can speak," he said at last. His voice was rough, yet strangely gentle. "What's your name?" "Evelyn," she answered softly. "Carter," he nodded, eyes on the horizon. "You got family?" She hesitated. The head, that one word told him everything. He didn't ask again. The West had a way of stealing answers no one wanted to give. By nightfall they reached his ranch, a vast stretch of quiet hills and broken fences where wind sang through empty corrals. "You can rest here," Daniel said, dismounting. He led her to a small cabin beside the main house. "It's yours, till you find your footing." Evelyn looked around, stunned by the warmth of the fire inside. "You're not expecting anything?" she asked, her voice trembling. He met her gaze with the kind of honesty that couldn't be faked, only that you eat, sleep, and stop flinching when someone raises their voice. Then he left her with food and silence. That night, Evelyn lay awake, staring at the wooden ceiling, the smell of smoke and leather filling her lungs. She didn't understand the man who had bought her freedom. Men in her world didn't give without taking. But Daniel Grayson wasn't like others. She'd seen it in his eyes, a sorrow deeper than her own. Somewhere in that ranch, she could hear him moving, the floorboards creaking softly. He hadn't locked her in. She could run if she wanted. But her heart whispered something strange. Maybe this was the first place she wasn't meant to flee. Days turned into a quiet rhythm. Evelyn helped in the kitchen, mended torn shirts and tended to the horses. Daniel spoke little, but his presence was steady, like the sunrise, always there when she looked up. He watched her learn, never interfering, never commanding. Once she burned the bread, panicking as she tried to hide it. He only chuckled. "Ain't the first time smoke's come out of that stove." She blinked, startled at his humor. Slowly laughter returned, awkward, fragile but real. For the first time in years, she felt useful, human. She began to hum when she worked. The townsfolk noticed her soon enough. Whispers followed her when she went into town with Daniel for supplies. "That's the girl he bought," they'd mutter. "Guess the rich man's got himself a bargain." Evelyn pretended not to hear, but Daniel did. Outside the general store he paused. "Don't let 'em shame you," he said quietly. "They don't know what it costs to survive." His words hit her harder than any insult ever could, because they carried understanding. That night, she wept silently into her pillow, not from sadness, but from the strange feeling of being seen for the first time. One evening, as the sky turned violet over the hills, Evelyn found Daniel on the porch mending a broken fence post. His wooden pipe lay beside him unlit. "You saved me," she said softly. He didn't look up. "No, I just opened a door." "You walked through it yourself." She hesitated. "Why did you help me?" He finally met her gaze. "Because once someone should have helped me and didn't." The quiet stretched between them, filled only by the hum of cicadas. For the first time, Evelyn realized freedom wasn't something you were given. It was something you earned and kept. That night, as the wind howled outside, Evelyn sat by the fire, tracing the scars on her wrists. Each mark told a story of pain, but also of endurance. Daniel walked in, setting his hat on the hook. "Tomorrow," he said softly, "we'll ride to the north pasture. Fences need mending," she smiled faintly. "I can do that." Their eyes met, and for a moment the distance between a poor woman and a lonely rancher vanished, replaced by something unspoken, something born of dust, courage, and quiet redemption. Neither called it love yet, but the West had already written it that way. The following weeks on Daniel Grayson's ranch passed like gentle echoes through the canyon. The hills were quiet, broken only by the call of hawks and the sound of wood being chopped at sunrise. Evelyn learned quickly how to saddle a horse, fix a fence, and find peace in the rhythm of work. The air smelled of mesquite and freedom. Daniel rarely spoke more than a few words, but when he did, they stayed with her. "The land doesn't care what you've been," he'd said one morning, "only what you give it." And for the first time, she gave herself purpose. The cabin that once felt foreign became her home. Each dawn, she'd light the stove before Daniel came in from the fields. He always nodded in quiet gratitude, the way men do when words are too heavy. Sometimes he'd tell her about the war, about the sound of men screaming under a crimson sky, and how silence afterward was the hardest thing to live with. Evelyn never pitied him. She just listened. In her own silence, he found understanding. Together, two broken people began building something fragile, a peace neither had ever known, born from shared scars and slow trust. One evening, as thunder rumbled far beyond the hills, Daniel found her outside, standing by the corral. Her hair was loose, blowing in the wind. The horses stirred restlessly. "Storm's coming," he said. She nodded, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "So is everything else," she whispered. He tilted his head. "What do you mean?" She turned to him, eyes glistening. "The past doesn't stay buried forever." Daniel didn't press further. He saw the fear in her face, the kind that didn't come from lightning or rain. Without another word, he handed her his coat, as if armor could be shared. When the rain fell, it came heavy, pounding against the roof like old ghosts demanding entry. Inside the cabin, Evelyn sat by the fire, drying her hair while Daniel watched the flames dance. "Why did you buy me?" she asked softly. He didn't look up at first. Then, after a long silence, he said, "Because I saw myself in your eyes. Someone who'd been broken and left behind." Her throat tightened. "And now?" she asked. Daniel looked into the fire. "Now I see someone finding her way back." The wind howled outside, but inside, something quiet and powerful took root. As days passed, their bond grew, not with grand gestures, but in small mercies. He showed her how to ride his chestnut mare, steadying her hands when fear made her tremble. She laughed when he nearly fell trying to fix a fence post in muddy boots. They shared coffee at dawn, their silences easy. The loneliness that once haunted the ranch began to lift. At night, Evelyn would hum old songs her mother used to sing, and Daniel, listening from the porch, found peace in her voice. The land, harsh and vast, suddenly felt like it had room for both of them, but peace is a fragile thing on the frontier. One dusty afternoon, a wagon rolled up the hill, the same one that had carried her to the auction months ago. Her stepbrother Clyde stepped down, flanked by 2 hired men. His smirk was the same, cruel and cold. "Well, well," he sneered. "Didn't think we'd find you here, Evie. Turns out you were worth more than $5 after all." Daniel stepped onto the porch, his rifle resting against his shoulder. "You lost the right to call her that," he said evenly. "Turn around and ride back where you came from." Clyde laughed, but there was no humor in it. "She's still property in the eyes of the law. You think buying her made her free? We've got papers now, signed by the marshal himself." Evelyn froze, terror flickering in her eyes. Daniel stepped forward, his boots crunching in the dirt. "I don't care what paper you have," he said. "She's not yours," one of Clyde's men spat on the ground. "You'll regret this, rancher." Daniel's jaw tightened. "I already have regrets. You don't scare me." When they finally rode off, dust swirling behind them, Evelyn's knees gave way and Daniel caught her before she fell. That night, the house stayed dark. Neither spoke for a long time. Finally, Evelyn broke the silence. "He won't stop." "He never did." Daniel set his rifle on the table. "Then neither will I." She looked up at him, tears glimmering in the firelight. "Why risk everything for me?" His voice was steady. "Because I know what it's like to live under someone else's thumb, to be told you're worth less than a man's coin." She reached across the table, her fingers brushing his. "You're the first person who ever made me believe I'm worth anything at all." At dawn, they came back. 3 riders, guns drawn, cutting through the fog like wolves on the hunt. Daniel was already waiting at the gate, his stance calm, his aim true. Evelyn stood behind him, clutching a lantern that flickered in the wind. Clyde sneered, raising his pistol. "Step aside, Grayson. I'll take what's mine." Daniel's eyes hardened. "You already sold her once. That's all you'll ever own." The first shot cracked like thunder. Horses reared. The world exploded in smoke and fire. When it cleared, one man lay wounded. Another fled. Clyde's hand trembled as he faced Daniel and lost his nerve. Daniel lowered his rifle slowly, chest heaving. Clyde stumbled back, fear finally replacing arrogance. "Go," Daniel said, voice low and lethal. "And if you ever come near her again, I won't miss next time." Clyde spat blood, then turned his horse and vanished into the desert. The ranch was silent again, save for the crackle of dying fire. Evelyn stepped forward, tears spilling freely now. "You could have killed him," she whispered. Daniel's expression softened. "Killing's easy. Letting go, that's the hard part." She took his hand, trembling. "You didn't just save me, Daniel. You saved what was left of my soul." That evening, as the sun sank low and the storm clouds faded into gold, Evelyn and Daniel stood on the porch together. The land stretched wide before them, scarred, wild, beautiful. She leaned against him, her head resting on his shoulder. "Do you ever wonder if we deserved this peace?" she asked quietly. He smiled faintly. "No one deserves peace, Evelyn. You fight for it, same as anything else." She nodded, her heart finally still. Once she'd been sold for $5. Now she stood beside a man who valued her beyond price, not as something to own, but someone to love. As night fell, Daniel lit the lamp, and the warm glow filled the cabin. Evelyn traced the scars on her wrists one last time before letting the past go. "You think it's really over?" she whispered. Daniel looked at her, eyes soft. "No," he said. "It's just beginning." Outside, the wind carried the scent of rain and redemption across the open plains. Inside, 2 hearts, once broken, now whole, found their home. The West didn't often give happy endings, but for Daniel Grayson and the woman once bought for $5, it gave something rarer, the freedom to live without fear.